joining us from our friends at NBC and from Football Night in America and his Football Morning in America Monday column that can be seen every single week on the old internet. He's our friend Peter King. How are you, Peter?
Hey, Rich. How you doing?
Well, I'm trying to figure out heads or tails if there's going to be a CBA by the end of the combine. What do you think, Peter?
Probably my gut feeling is no. This is obviously a multifaceted story and situation, but I always get a kick out of people who read a headline about or do some some discovery about some big story, and then all of a sudden say, "No, this stinks. We're not doing it." I mean, you've had. At least as far as players go, you've had a designated group of players negotiating a new CBA for 10 months with a group of owners. And to me, I think probably the more logical reaction after something like this comes out is, well, I'll have an opinion when I see the whole thing. But I always sort of chuckle at all people who say, well, we're not going to take this deal. It stinks. And it may stink, but wouldn't you want to find out about it first before you said that? And that, I think, was basically the knee-jerk reaction by a lot of people last night.
So, right now, again, things can change, certainly even by the end of this conversation. But right now, the reporting is that the executive committee of the Players Association, in advancing it to the 32 player reps, recommended to vote against this 6-5. And as our colleague Judy Batista of NFL Media Group points out, the twist in this is that some of the members of the executive committee were in the room to negotiate this. So maybe they were part of the 5 that said yes to this. I mean, what do you make of all of this, Peter?
Well, I think all along there have been a cadre of players who've said we do not want more than 16 games in the regular season schedule, and rightfully so. This is a time, Rich, where every person who watches or pays any attention to the NFL understands that this is a very dangerous game. That does not get less dangerous when you add 60 more snaps or 65 more snaps that starting players would have to play during the course of the year. I think that far and away was the biggest mistake about this new deal. And then I do, Richard Sherman spoke out against it quite eloquently, I thought, at the Super Bowl, and he obviously is on that executive committee. I do think there are some other issues with this. I can't imagine that anybody who makes a lot of money, when you tell him that, hey, you make $1.5 million a week during the season, but for this 17th game, you'll make $250,000. That when I first saw that, I said, that just doesn't figure. Now, I believe that the union probably said, look, it's more important for our real rank and file. This is not going to affect that many players. So we would rather see players in the middle part of the curve compensated significantly for that 17th game. However, there are just so many players that are going to be affected by that. I can't imagine that going over well. And then I think the other part of it that players just almost naturally wouldn't like is that this is being done basically 13 months before or 14 months before the CBA will expire. And even though there are benefits to doing it now, I think a lot of players would say, what's the rush? Let's take it to the end and let's see what happens. I do think, though, Rich, one of the other parts of this is that, NFL players just have never had the stomach for a strike. And that's, at the end of the day, that is what is probably going to doom any revolutionary type of change in a contract with the owners.
Peter King of NBC Sports and, of course, the Peter King podcast right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, I'll ask you the same question I asked our buddy Adam Schefter the other day. Is there anything, too, that Joe Burrow doesn't want to play for the Cincinnati Bengals rumor that keeps on getting bigger and stronger?
Not that I know of, Rich. I don't know anything about it other than, the Joe Burrow camp has been extremely quiet. His agents have been quiet. Everybody's been quiet about it. And really, all he has to do is come out and say, whoever drafts me, I'll play for him. It feels like he's almost said that, but he really hasn't said that in so many words. And that's all that has to happen. Without saying that, it's logical that speculation would run rampant. It doesn't strike me that he would pull an Eli Manning or a John Elway, but having said that, I don't know. I have zero inside information on it, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, and it was announced just this morning he will be, for those scoring at home, he will be on Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time at podium number 3 for everybody to talk to. And I guess he's got to, at some point, someone's just going to put the question point blank to him, do you want to play for the Bengals or not? And I imagine that is going to be question number 1 for him, because a lot of the I have leverage or if they take me, they take me comments is what's been adding more and more, gasoline on this rumor.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's sort of hard for me to think that he will take a militant stance. All that is, though, is a guess. He seems like a guy who wants to play football and will play his hardest no matter where he is. But again, we'll see. I guess we'll start to find that out on Tuesday.
We've given a half of the poll question choices, Christopher, to our guest, Peter King, right here. Ask him our poll question that's up on at Rich Eisen Show on our Twitter feed.
Yeah, Peter, what's the biggest NFL offseason storyline? Tom Brady's future, Joe Burrow versus the Bengals, Tua's health, or the 17-game expansion and the bigger playoffs?
Brady. Nothing is even close for second place in that one as far as I'm concerned, especially if Brady leaves. Just imagine if Tom Brady is in a different uniform next year, wherever it is, Tennessee or the Chargers or Vegas. It'd be revolutionary for this league. A guy who plays one place for 1/5 of the history of the National Football League and then tries to win it again and resuscitate his career somewhere else. I don't think there can be anything bigger than that. At least I wouldn't think.
What's your best guess as we're sitting here right now? We're less than a month now until the new league year window, negotiating window, if you will, opens up. What do you got for me on that, Peter?
Well, I think this is probably going to be a situation where he very likely will have a chance to make more money elsewhere. Let's say the Raiders, for example. I just think that at some point John Gruden is going to try to grab him by the scruff of the neck and say, please, whatever it takes, I want you. But I wrote the other day that I thought that the most logical thing, I would call it a mild prediction, is that he returns to New England. Because other than the time I spent with him right after his last game, I have not spoken to him, and I think this is all going to be dependent on what Bill Belichick wants. I think there are a lot of logical things. Logic tells me that the Chargers are going to be more of a long-term play. In other words, draft Justin Herbert, play Tyrod Taylor this year, develop the young quarterback, and don't take the easy way to selling luxury suites in year one at the new stadium. I think that it's most logical. If I were John Robinson, I'd certainly take the long play and sign Ryan Tannehill for a long time. Rich, I don't think anybody even thinks about this. Ryan Tannehill played 15 games this year, and he had the best passer rating by a quarterback in the NFL since 2013. And, it's not like he played 3 or 4 games. He played 15. So what's not to want to re-sign him for? And then I think the other usual suspects, I think if I had to put $5 down in Vegas right now, no pun intended here with Gruden, but if I had to put $5 down, I'd say Phillip Rivers to Indianapolis. It's too logical a fit with Frank Reich and so much of that offense, him knowing, Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator, was there for 3 years in San Diego with him. And then Teddy Bridgewater in Tampa. Those would be my initial guesses here about a month out.
So then where does Jameis go, Peter?
I think he's going to have to go I doubt sincerely he goes somewhere and somebody hands him a starting job. The place that I think it would be so intriguing, I would love to see Jameis Winston go to Pittsburgh and back up Roethlisberger for this year and then maybe have the job in 2021 and beyond. I mean, how great would it be? I think he's played right now for Dirk Cutter, Bruce Arians, Byron Leftwich, and he's played for a bunch of offensive guys who have tried to fix everything around him. Maybe he just needs some tough love from a Mike Tomlin. I don't know, but obviously the coaching he's gotten so far has not cut down his kryptonite, which is the turnovers. And something's got to be done about that, I think.
And then you mentioned Vegas. I just is it just because everybody knows Gruden and Gruden did love Jameis too, or the fact that Gruden loves veteran quarterbacks, or we think that he just is never happy with the quarterback that he has. He just likes collecting them. I mean, is that why that we're talking about that?
Rich, he John Gruden, his favorite quarterback is always the one he doesn't have. And, so I think Vegas is definitely in play for anybody, for Brady, for Jameis, whoever. I don't know who John Gruden loves out there right now. I do know that it would have been very easy for the Raiders at some point late in the season or this off season to say, stop putting all these quarterbacks in Vegas. Derek Carr's our guy. We're not going to be looking at any other quarterbacks in the off season. They haven't said that. So that leads you to ask the same kind of questions that everybody is wondering about with Joe Burrow.
In the few minutes I have left with you, Peter King, what about Cam? What's going on with him? What do you think of this?
I thought it was pretty telling last week when the owner of the Panthers basically said, talk to me when he's healthy. Is he healthy? We don't know. And I'm paraphrasing, but He said something like that. I mean, you know enough about Cam Newton's physical condition to know what kind of physical shape he's in right now and how his shoulder is. How can you not really? And so that said to me like they've already mentally started thinking about life after Cam. Now, that's just me having covered the league for a long time. That might not be what David Tepper is thinking, but it sure sounded like that's what he's thinking. The one thing you know about Tepper, and I mentioned Phillip Rivers to Indianapolis, Teddy Bridgewater to Tampa, David Tepper proved with the Matt Rule negotiations or I don't even call it a negotiation. I call it handing him a lottery ticket. And in making him, basically the highest paid first year head coach ever in the NFL. If you're going to give Matt Rule $8.8 million a year when he has been in the NFL for 1 year as an assistant offensive line coach, well, that just says to me that if David Tepper really wants something, if he really wants Phillip Rivers, I don't know that he'll get him,
right?
But he will outbid anybody else who wants Phillip Rivers. Same thing with Teddy Bridgewater. So that's the thing right now that we don't know. They've been a pretty tight ship right now in Carolina. So you don't really hear a lot of good or reliable rumors out of there. But to me, if David Tepper wants one of these guys on the market, he'll be able to go get him.
Or has given his coach so much security. And with Olsen now in Seattle and Luke Kuechly gone, and
you're right. Maybe they're going to start from scratch,
which is why
draft Justin Herbert and play at the patient, play the long game.
Well, Daniel Jeremiah said in terms of the long game, he was here yesterday. What about tanking for Trevor? Trevor Lawrence lurks, sir, down the horizon.
I mean, look at everybody said the exact same thing a year ago about the Dolphins. Then the Dolphins dumped 3 of their top. They already were a crappy team. They dumped 3 of their top 10 players.
Yeah.
And then they won more games after Halloween than the New England Patriots. So I don't understand how anybody could logically say, hey, let's try to get the first pick next year. There's a matter of playing the games. And unless you're going to fix the games, it's pretty hard to say in a year where you could get Justin Herbert, hey, wait a second, let's try to go 1-15 next year so we can be sure we get Trevor Lawrence. How do you know you're going 1-15?
Right.
How do you know somebody else isn't going 1-15? Or so that's a pretty dangerous game to play, in my opinion.
Peter, I'll see you at the Combine. Thanks for the call. We'll see you in Indy.
All right. Hey, Rich, good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Right back at you. That's Peter King.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.